All right, here we are, that time of the show, off the court, something a little bit different, not basketball related. And of course, just because the election had just taken place, I try to really monitor and skew how I get involved in these things. I have a lot of different opinions on the political scene and what happens and America itself and the United States, and everybody has an opinion. And it was so polarizing this year, the election, whether you voted for Trump or voted for Kamala, whatever it may be, Democrat, Republican, it was really polarizing. The rhetoric around it, I think we can all agree, was probably a lot unnecessary, a lot of the divisive language used on both sides of the table, whether it's Democrat or Republican. A lot of happy people right now because Trump is back in office, a lot of people that are unhappy because Kamala and the Democrats didn't win. But at the end of the day, it's like, as Americans, what do we really want? And this is a question that's been asked, over time. It's the political system is what it is. And a lot of people say, and this is just my opinion, that the system is broken. And I say, well, how is it broken when it was set up this way and it's working perfectly? Okay. That in the way the Constitution and the forefathers set it up, it was set around a set of different rules and a set of people, mainly Anglo-Saxons at the time, that were in charge. And the political system there and followed it. A lot of times people think that the votes don't matter, and I talked about this before in these elections, but your voice does count, especially on the local level. But my big picture, my big thing was this election like we had this year building up just showed how far away we are as a country to race relations, political relations, religious beliefs and systems. Because if we're all really true to what the premise of the United States is about, religious freedom of religion, to believe and follow who and what religion you want, freedom of speech. And I think that has to be to a certain degree as well, that you're protected by the laws of the Constitution, not based on, color, creed, religion. But these things have yet to kind of been fully fulfilled throughout the history of this country. When you have to kind of pass laws, in my opinion, or Bill of Rights for certain freedoms, I don't think they're lasting. I don't think they have the stick-to-itiveness. I don't think they have the impact because you're trying to convince someone to change the way they think because of a bill or a law. And that doesn't change the mindset of the person. And that's what we kind of continue to do with, I don't care if it's the civil rights, if it's the Bill of Rights, or if it's the Voting Act, if it's the housing discrimination. If you got to pass laws and rights for that, that tells you a lot about the mentality, because these are rights that should be generated to each and every person that lives here in the United States, and you shouldn't have to pass a law in order for that to happen. And unfortunately, we have. So, this week just made me really reflect on how far we have to go. We've come a long way. But when you look across the country and you look at the different regions, the different states, or different small towns, on the words and what people were saying they wanted and needed and expected from their presidential candidate. And when you look at a lot of the noise that was created around this year's election, there's a lot of distractions, whether it was what was happening in Ukraine, what was happening from the job market, what was happening from healthcare, what was happening from the economy, whether it was global warming, all these different things going on. But yet the big thing was, the big sticking point was still the racial conversation. All this other stuff is going on. But when you really broke it down, to me, it revolved a lot around race in this particular election. And hopefully, we can get to a point, I don't know when that's going to be. I really don't. Whether it's my kids' have an opportunity, but We haven't had it in this country where we had true, really great race relations. I don't care what ethnicity it is. And is it a realistic goal is the question. Because if you really want it to happen, it can happen. But is it really a realistic goal to be able to have race relations at a point where we don't have this divisive nature? And the question also goes back to, in the history of the world, have we ever really had that equal playing field and level field? I don't think we have. But there's ways to be able to navigate through that. So this just my thoughts. And hopefully down the line, I'll be able to have some guests on to kind of dive into this subject matter a lot more, because I have a lot more thoughts and ideas about it just from reading about the times before us that have kind of predicted what's going on right now. But it leads me to believe that these kind of conversations need to be had in a not an argumentative way. I think you can agree to disagree, you can have your different opinions, but you got to be open to listening, because you may learn something in between that when you have your thought processes in your mind on what you think is really true. But yet instead, you got to understand where somebody else is coming from and their point of view and why they think the way they do, even if you don't agree. Even if you don't agree, you got to be able to hear people out. And by doing that, maybe there's a commonality in there that you can agree upon and agree to disagree to have a civil conversation. And hopefully moving forward, that's what we can have a lot more of. Agree to disagree, but yet have a civil conversation. Check out new episodes of The Jim Jackson Show every Thursday. Watch on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page. Follow the show on Instagram @Jim Jackson Show, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.